Welcome to Blacklisted Radio, another live edition. My name is Doug Owen. I am the host of this little show. It's a 1-hour program. We do live Sunday nights at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time. I am the senior editor of blacklistednews.com. My website dedicated to this show is blacklistedradio.com. Go there, hang out with the ambassadors, the well-wishers there in the chat room. We'll be happy to greet you during the live show anyway. And you can be part of it telephonically, 800-313-9443, via the Twitter sphere, if you dare. BLN Radio is the handle for that. And you can text me. Easy way to get a hold of me, 512-222-3067. So, big news of the week. You're probably tired of hearing about it. Although, it's pretty exciting. It's a Brexit. Nobody thought this was going to happen. Quite honestly, if you would ask me last weekend what I thought the probability of the UK leaving the economic stranglehold of Brussels, the European Union, I would have told you that I was, just like most of you, pretty pessimistic about the chances of that. Mainly because, I figured that the government would just rig the vote. We had so much opposition to the Brexit. This is the UK leaving the EU via referendum. David Cameron, of course, was very vocal. The fear-mongering surrounding the possibility of a Brexit, what it may do to the economy, the shocks, the ripples, the mayhem that was this Friday's markets. Not very shocking, but David Cameron, along with the Rothschilds, George Soros, Henry Kissinger, Mitt Romney, who else? Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, as Breitbart titled one of their articles, the power elite, Obama and Hillary Clinton are on the wrong side of history, and Donald Trump's on the right side of history. So it's interesting how we have these memes, these new narratives coming out, and while the media is just beside itself in damage control, trying their best to retroactively demonize the Brexit, it is a breath of fresh air. So we're going to talk about what this means for the UK, if they're allowed to leave. We have a lot of legal paperwork that has to happen before we actually see a real Brexit, before the UK officially leaves. They have to get their European papers or their EU papers in check here, and this just came out off the wire as I wait for my computer to load. That's why I'm going to buy a new computer. I'm doing better, I guess, than some of the people that lost collectively. The estimate is $127 billion in the markets on Friday. So basically the EU says you have to get out now. You have to invoke Article 50 by Tuesday to leave the European Union. So let's just talk about what happened. If you watched the coverage Thursday night here in the U.S. of the Brexit taking place, the reporting was pretty spotty. I mean, everybody's just going back and refreshing. I'm going to Drudge. I'm going to Zero Hedge. I'm going to a lot of places that are following the markets, following the narrative, and keeping up with the story. All the polls, it seemed that people thought it was a foregone conclusion that the UK was going to stay. We saw parties, celebrations by politicians. Yay, we're staying. Yay, yay, yay. And then, boom, we saw the huge outpouring of people, and the numbers, the percentages are just, it's amazing, really, when you think about it compared to the United States, as far as people voting. 72% of people turned out in my home country. Not that I'm from there, but where my ancestors are from, Wales. So the Welshies are looking to exit as well as 8 other countries now debating a referendum. And just the latest off the wire, Portugal looking at is it Portugal? They might not even be in the EU. One of the states was looking at, possibly leaving because they're going to have to face sanctions for not getting their money in order with the European Union. The centralized control that is the EU is, it's a stranglehold. It's a big stranglehold on economies, and that could be maybe a good thing and or a bad thing. And what I mean by that is that, sure, the European Union having an overlord that is not responsive to local issues is a bad idea. I believe in direct representative government, at least at the, county, city, state level, and the power that it wields. I believe that you should have that in the UK too. So for you out there wondering where I am at, I'm definitely not on the fence, and I'm all for an EU. People taking their own destinies, their own political direction into their own hands. Now, that's not always a good thing. You look at places like Venezuela, other socialist nations that have broken away and started creating their own currency. One of the things that's a great advantage of being a sovereign nation, having your own currency, making your own money, not having to use the euro-denoted notes to do business internationally and locally. But, your local government can blow up the economy as well and debt the people into serfdom to maybe a private central bank, similar to what we have here with the Federal Reserve. So, before people get too excited about what the Brexit is going to ultimately be, a lot of people are very fearful. I briefly talked about this last week, that it's not going to be this huge issue. It's not going to break the people in this country, break their backs. They're not going to be spending more on food and everything else that has been shoveled down the throats of the non-responsive media goers in the UK. But it does present a lot of opportunities for self-interested decisions to take place. So, interestingly enough, people are upset. And anything that happens economically from this point forward for the EU and even for the UK will probably end up being blamed on the Brexit. That's one of the downsides. Anything that that fails, anything that is a failure of government will be because of the Brexit. And, having central control by a bunch of unelected bureaucrats seems ideal to some, but not to the old people. Now, that's one of the big memes I saw today being perpetrated by the media, is that it's really the old white people that voted for the Brexit, and the youth, the young voters, of course, overwhelmingly were in support of staying in the UK. And we get right back to something I hear here in the U.S. It pops up during the election cycle, and that is that, the old people are determining what the young people will have to live in. And that is just so blanketly obvious anyway, when it comes to not just the UK and the Brexit, but just about any governmental system in the United States especially. The people that vote are the older people. That's who votes. And so those people usually make the decisions for the younger populace. And a lot of the things that you're doing economically, the people that are in government right now, that are by and large old-ish, are making decisions economically that will affect my great-great-grandchildren, assuming that there is some system, a semblance of the U.S. dollar at that point. I'm not that optimistic, but it's interesting to kind of have the whole ageist divide here in pitting the old against the young. Of course, you have the right wing versus the leftist neoliberals. You have those that really do legitimately want change. I mean, that's really what it comes down to, is that I don't know if most of the voters thought too much about the implications or what this ultimately meant or will mean to their country. More or less, there's a lot of anger towards the status quo, austerity. And on the right side of that, you would have people that are very anti-immigration, and seeing what's happening in Europe today, fearful of the disintegration of their economies and their cultures. So they're making it seem that the only reason it passed is because we have old, racist, xenophobic people in the UK that just aren't hip. They're not hip to what's happening out there. But this is a huge rebuff to the Clintons, to now the Obama appointee, Hillary Clinton, or the approval has gone to her. And the mention of her emails and the fact that you have the acting president endorsing Hillary Clinton while under indictment in an investigation into her email scandal, which just day by day, the things that come out, it's worth mentioning. She had to have special permissions and all sorts of workarounds to be able to send and receive email from the State Department. I mean, just goes on and on and on. And it amazes me. It doesn't amaze me, but it definitely proves to me, proof positive, that we do have a political elite economic class that is above the law. The fact that Hillary Clinton is not in jail, she's not being scrutinized at all in the public eye, really speaks volumes about where we're at today. So, I have a lot of expectations for these people in the UK and throughout Europe that have decided to make the very brave choice of a representative government, a national representative government, rather than allowing, the political, economic academics to rule over their countries. And they've had a while to do it. They've had quite a run, almost 20 years now, with the European Union. And, our people in the UK are average citizens, average white workers. Are they doing better? Absolutely not. And neither are the people that are being looking for, a place to live, a place to expatriate from their own situations, whether it be in the Middle East, running away from a war in Syria, a war against the people in Turkey, or anywhere else where people are, looking for a new opportunity. Those opportunities are not there for them either, and this presents a huge problem. So we really have the nationalists, and I know that gets used with neo-Nazism, and they do their best to paint people that see national interests as a cause for political action, as just bottom of the barrel, simpleton, stupid, unnourished, and uninterested people that subscribe to those ideologies. Well, what's the exact opposite of that? Globalization. So, as much as we have heard about the Brexit, and we're going to continue to hear about the Brexit, where it stands, where the EU stands, will be it's to be determined. This is a great step forward for the people in the UK. They take the opportunity to do something with it, to elect something better, and it's going to be interesting to see the fallout and what comes of it. I do think that people choosing their own destiny, usually the outcome is much better than having some centralized European bureaucrat deciding what you're paying for electricity, what you're paying for gas, how much of your money is going to the new European army or NATO or any other protectionary group that's out there. So giving 2 to 3% of your GDP to NATO, to the European Union, all those things, and then of course having to pay fines for not meeting the stringent economic strangleholds on these economies. It's a problem. That's why we see a huge contraction, obviously, because these countries can't print their own money. That's why the U.S. and a few other countries, China, Russia, global powers, are able to do that and able to pretty effectively manipulate markets to the point where you would think that we would have the Zimbabwe dollar, but the belief that the economic unions behind these currencies is much bigger. And that's going to be the problem with the euro, is that it's all really the dollar. All fiat currencies are faith-based currency systems. It requires people to believe in it. And of course, the media has really set, and the power elite have really set the UK to fail. And I think they're going to do everything they can to punish the UK for this betrayal to the elite. So, I mean, it's a big deal, unless you believe that, the real conspiracy theory is that they wanted the UK to leave, and that they secretly wanted this to happen to destroy the UK, to bring about even stronger EU, or something maybe even better, some Pan-American Union. TTIP, other trade deals, off the table, probably dead. When it comes to collective bargaining and the ability, that's one of the things they've really harped on, is that the UK will not be able to collectively bargain into these large trade agreements. Yeah, maybe not, but believe you me, there will be plenty of people that want to trade with the UK. I mean, now not under the European Union, I don't know that the UK has to continue sanctions against Russia. Not that you want to get in bed with Vladimir Putin. That might not be a comfortable position. It might be quite precarious. But you have those options out there. You have plenty of countries that want to invest. As much as we saw the people freaking out in the stock market, I mean, you have huge buying opportunities as well. And people are going to invest in the UK. I mean, there's people there, there's taxpayers. The initial shock and awe will be gone in just a week, and things will be back to, I think, pretty much usual. I mean, they're making it sound like this is going to be the end of civilization as we know it, and that people are just going to start running out into the streets, mad, crazy, stabbing one another. Anyway, probably not going to happen. But I love watching all of these politicians eating crow. No doubt, and pundits alike, all of the people out there that thought that they had a prediction and they knew what was going to happen. This kind of flips all of those predictions on themselves up. I mean, it's a 50-50. you can bet or make a prediction on the Brexit. 50% of the time you're going to be right. But most people were betting staying, because, I mean, look who was behind the stay movement. Every politician that you and I love to hate, usually we talk about them. We have the scumbag of the day, Charlie Rangel. We'll talk about him on the other side. Your comments on the Brexit, if you have any. 800-313-9443. It's Blacklisted Radio. Welcome back. It's Blacklisted Radio. Yeah, the Brexit it's becoming kind of overwhelming with the amount of media coverage. I know it's kind of a boring topic because, well, if you listen to a lot of talk radio, you've probably heard quite a bit about it. Rupert Murdoch was somebody who was campaigning against for the Brexit, for the exiting of the UK. A lot of people that were very powerful and very influential see opportunity. Obviously, people like Donald Trump and people that have invested in the Trump machine see these opportunities, and the UK, this exit, as a positive. So not everybody. I mean, yeah, Hillary Clinton, yeah, Barack Obama, they have mud on their faces. So does David Cameron, but I mean, that guy's had worse on his face. We've talked about it here on the show. If you text me, 512-222-3067, I'll remind you of that horrific story about where David Cameron has put his mouth. But nonetheless, a lot of people think, well, this is obviously a conspiracy. And, I do wonder, how much of this was managed, if the vote is real, if we actually have a legitimate democracy. I mean, in the U.S., you have a coordinated effort to keep the people that are rich and powerful in those positions by limiting the choices that average Americans have. You have Tweedledee, the Republicans, Tweedledum, the Democrats. And in a two-party system, what we essentially have here in the U.S., thanks to the constrainment, the arrangements with the mainstream media, American people are just not presented with anything other than two choices, both of which part of two old parties that are deeply, deeply invested and vested in the power brokers behind them. So, I mean, they just look at the rules that they have for these parties to be anointed. Of course, Bernie Sanders still upset, still hanging out there. I guess he's finally come to grips. And now he's endorsed Hillary Clinton. So I don't know how progressive or wild of a guy that is. People are so emphatically in love with Bernie Sanders. But, I mean, does it turn you off that he endorsed Hillary a little bit? Just a little bit? Anyway, speaking of the Clintons, I think it's well worth mentioning that the Clinton death count, if you're not familiar, you can Google Clinton death count. You can find all the people that have been fostered, that have shown up depressed and found themselves no longer above ground after challenging and threatening the Clinton crime family. We have one more. If you haven't heard about this, former UN General Assembly President John Ash, who was awaiting trial in a $1 million corruption scandal, died while weightlifting after a barbell dropped onto his neck. Interestingly enough, very much tied to Hillary Clinton. So the latest from the Daily Mail is that he was set to testify against Hillary Clinton in a U.S. district court. And he was going up on charges. His own corruption had led to a plea bargaining with the U.S. district attorneys. And, well, he is no more. Unfortunate barbell to the throat. And Hillary Clinton has one less problem. Not that all the other things shouldn't be problems, but they don't seem to be anyway. Her lavish lifestyle, the millions upon billions of dollars she was paid. Who knows how much she made in speeches, or maybe not speeches. Who knows? Basically, direct bribes from the Wall Street bankers. Not shocking, but anyway, this story is not going to get a lot of legs due to everything else that's going on out there. I thought it was interesting to point this out. So I mentioned Charlie Rangel. Charlie Rangel has popped up on the radar this week for two reasons. We'll talk about those on the other side. Lots coming your way. more crimes, more corruption, more bad people that need exposing. We'll talk about it. You can be part of it. 800-313-9443. It's Blacklisted Radio. All right, welcome back. It's Blacklisted Radio. 800-313-9443. All right, so another person potentially killed by Hillary Clinton. Not shocking. Not shocking. I know some of the people are trying to wrap their minds around the Brexit. I don't know if I really have anything extra to kind of add to it, other than when you look at, like Donald Trump. Who's Donald Trump? What is Donald Trump going to be as the next U.S. president? A lot of people are voting for Trump just like they did for the Brexit because they know what the other option is. It's voting in a wild card. Okay, we don't know what Donald Trump will do. We do know that he goes and hangs out with Henry Kissinger. And that doesn't mean that he's going to take his advice. Doesn't mean that Henry Kissinger is going to be running U.S. foreign policy under the Trump regime. But, maybe you have to kiss a few hands, or maybe get some bullet points from what happened at Bilderberg to go forward. Of course, they were very, at least according to reports, worried about the Brexit. So, is this... I don't know. I don't necessarily buy it, because I think, that the most powerful people in the world, the Bilderbergers, they can't stop the Brexit, and that would run counter to many conspiracy theorists' notions. People like Alex Jones's notion that these are the controllers of the world. They map human destiny, and that there is no choice that you have as an individual over the system. So is voting Donald Trump the antithesis of that? Does it really mean that we're voting for something else, or is it just another big letdown? Well, if you put your moral compass to the right direction, due north, you will, you're not going to have too many problems seeing through what these people represent. So I'll be honest, I don't know what Donald Trump represents, but I know what Hillary Clinton represents. The people in the UK don't know what it's going to be like without the EU, but they know what it's like to be in the EU. So the options, I think, that are being presented are less palatable to the people. People are just not buying into that any longer. So anyway, just wanted to mention that. Last week, we talked about Mateen, who I probably called Martine about 15 times, the Orlando shooter. Sorry, I'm in Texas, and Martine just, it rolls off the tongue because I know a guy named Martine. So, Mateen, the story, we talked about all of the oddities, peculiarities that were evident just last week. And, of course, FBI involvement, not to mention the fact his dad is a CIA operator. The history is well laid out, and the mainstream media is not countering, saying, those things happen, sure, yeah. Well, interestingly enough, Andrew Napolitano, Judge Napolitano, had a pretty interesting piece. Don't have time to play it, but it was about the Orlando shooting, saying that basically the FBI reported that nobody died until like 5:58 a.m. Pretty wild. But what we didn't know is that, and I don't know if there's any validity to that or if that's just some kind of error, but we do know now that the FBI tried to radicalize, and actually they contacted Mateen and tried to get him to conduct terror. The FBI used one of their honeypot teams, and they actually actively recruited. And that is something that is not being talked about at all this week. A huge smoking gun in that story. So I wanted to mention that before we talked about Mr. Charles Rangel. He's one of these guys who's been around too long. He always talks about opening the draft. People get excited. Oh, they're going to draft everybody. They're going to draft all the women and all the people. We're going to war because Charlie Rangel has a bill once again to start the draft. Anyway, gun grabber, typical Democrat in most regards. This week, he came into the news for two things. Number one, he is indicted for 11 out of 13 ethics violations. Not a very ethical guy, committing a lot of crime. House Ethics Committee subpanel founders found that the Democratic Representative Charlie Rangel was guilty of 11 of the 13 charges of ethics violations against him. The panel, composed of 4 Democrats and 4 Republicans, energized after private deliberation to announce their findings. Quote, "This has been a difficult assignment." Blah, 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 blah. Yeah. Anyway, taking bribes, things that are conflicts of interest, not very shocking. But he also raised eyebrows this week when he said that essentially only politicians and celebrities, famous people, need firearms. So when they asked Charlie Rangel in this back and forth interview if he believed that people needed weapons, and he said, absolutely not. You don't need a gun. You out there have nothing to fear. Why? Because, of course, the government is looking after you. But people like Charlie Rangel, who are famous, who have lots of money, and are part of the political class, absolutely, when asked if he needed guns, he was very nonchalant. Said, of course I do. I mean, come on. You know, Nancy Pelosi, she might not care about the border on Mexico or to Mexico, but she has a wall around her house. She has constant security surveillance teams, private contractors working 24/7 to make sure that her and people like her, like Barbara Boxer, other people that are so apt to tell you that you don't need a firearm to protect you and your family. So, I mean, he's a hypocrite and he's a criminal, and he's a horrible example of somebody who has really become a race tragedy pimp. He has pimped out his own people. He is one of the fine examples of Democrats that plague the black populace in the upper Northeast. A perfect example. I mean, if you look at the corruption that has happened in places like Baltimore, I mean, you would think it was a bunch of racist right-wing Republican types that were running these racist governments. Quite the contrary. So anyway, kind of a scumbag. Thought I would call him out today because I saw him in the headlines 2 times for 2 particularly disgusting comments and behaviors being exhibited by Mr. Rangel. So there is that. He, like many other Democrats, are still trying to push for more gun control. It failed in the Senate. Oh, did you see the sit-in? All the sad Democrats were very, very upset. The immaturity of the Senate, it's just appalling that they wouldn't, go forward with broad, unconstitutional, completely subjective legislation, unenforceable legislation. I mean, that's the big thing that makes it so unconstitutional, besides the fact it's against the Second Amendment. It's that it's unenforceable. You know, laws that don't make sense, that are they're written poorly, they can't stand the test of time. They can't, stand the jurisprudence. So prudence. So anyway, saw that, and just one more example of the hysteria. And of course, people taking the opportunity to propagandize the people and trying to push their own agendas. Not shocking to anyone, really. I want to mention this, the mass shooting myth. U.S. homicide rate is now at a 51-year low, as ownership has increased 141%. Say what? Huh? That doesn't make any sense. Thought gun crime was going way up. Mass shootings are on the rise. And maybe if you consider that anybody in a mass shooting, it's 2 people or more, and neither have to be mortally wounded, you're going to see those statistics show up a lot more. Used to be if you shot 2 people, it wasn't a mass shooting. And for it to be really considered a mass shooting by most people, you would think somebody would have to die. I mean, I don't mean to be macabre, but it's unimpressive to have a mass shooting, and it was just a guy who shot himself and one other person in the leg accidentally. I mean but by definition, that's a mass shooting. So, it's a kind of a numbers game when you look at all of these crime statistics that are often cited and recited and regurgitated. It's well worth noting that the amount of gun violence has not increased. You would think that you would have seen an unprecedented 141% homicide rate increase because of the amount of guns that are in this country. We always hear about that. How many guns are in this country? Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. The chances of you being shot by a terrorist like Omar Mateen, pretty low. The odds of you being shot by a cop, pretty low, but not as low. Not as low. So, well worth mentioning. Now, when you think about, I know a lot of people that listen to this genre of radio have always talked about, the United Nations. Actually, we have a picture of some United Nations carriers that were being shipped into Virginia this week. It gets people wondering, what the hell's the UN doing here? Is this another Jade Helm 15? Are we going to be taken over? Is the New World Order going to use the UN and the black helicopters to, take people's guns at gunpoint? I mean, that was kind of one of those. Yeah, we'll go to Mike on the other side of the break. If you'd like to join us, we'll go to Mike in South Carolina. You can be part of it, 800-313-9443. But, you think about the notion when the government, especially people like even our governor here, Abbott, we're talking about Jade Helm. It's the U.S. military is not going to engage the people, and it seems pretty weird that we're doing this here in Bastrop County, not a stone's throw from where I sit, but that's not the U.S. military's gig, and that there might be some truth to that. There are now more bureaucrats with guns than there are U.S. Marines. So when people talk about a standing army, maybe not, but we do have a standing army of militarized bureaucrats. You would be shocked, and I was actually shocked to see how many bureaucracies now have assault weapons, AR-15s. There's a really interesting question you should ask your gun-grabbing friends. If you don't need an AR-15, why does your mailman, why does the EPA, why do EPA bureaucrats need semi-automatic assault rifles? Now, if you said, well, why does Doug have one? Well, I'll tell you why I have an AR-15. I like to plink with it. I like target shooting. I do use it to kill rodents. You can hunt with it, although it's not the most ideal hunting rifle, but it's not a bad hunting rifle, depending on the size of game. If you're shooting hogs or other feral animals that you don't care a lot about and you don't plan on mounting, AR-15 is a great platform. But as much as people make about the AR-15, the real deal, just ask producer Craig there in the chat room, is the AR-10. A good friend of mine who is a gun fanatic, his words, not mine. I would call him more of a aficionado, an enthusiast. But he's like, I don't know what the big deal about the AR-15 is, man. I'm all about the AR-10. So it's because it's easy to demonize. People see that it's become this symbol. Now you have Mayor Bloomberg and former CIA operative Michael Hayden, the guy that said, well, we don't need. He basically reinterpreted the Fourth Amendment in a famous back and forth with a reporter. He's really scummy. He just oozes of criminal. And he and Gabby Giffords and some other people from NASA have started another, and Bloomberg have started another Let's Disarm Americans. And I'm not one of these people that believes that, you owning a firearm or millions of Americans owning firearms, mind you, is going to keep the government at bay. I think that that's where, the debate gets off. People like me, people like you, and a lot of other people believe that the people need guns not only to protect ourselves from other people, but especially from tyrannical governments. People don't like to say that because it sounds anti-government, but it's absolutely true. And that's what people, I think, the on the left that are very anti-gun, they want to make it very restrictive and basically, rather than it being a right, being a privilege. Explaining, they want you to explain all the reasons that you possibly have to want a firearm. And then some bureaucrat in D.C. will decide, well, you do hunt a lot. I see you on Facebook and you got a camo hat. I guess so. You voted for Obama. You seem like a nice guy. I guess we'll give you a gun. They don't see that. That doesn't, and a lot of people that are pro Second Amendment don't want to go down that road because, you don't want to seem anti-government. You don't want to seem like an extremist, like some wacko nut. You don't want to be that guy. But that's the very reason. But people don't want to broach that topic, really. And understandably. But this came from the Free Beacon. There are now more non-military government employees who carry guns than there are U.S. Marines, according to a new report. The Open Books report, a taxpayer watchdog group put together, released a study Wednesday that finds domestic government agencies continue to grow their stockpiles of military-style weapons as Democrats sat on the House floor calling for more restrictions on what guns American citizens can buy. Let's ban the AR-15. It's just like, hate speech. Let's just ban Twitter. Let's ban pins. I don't like... We got people that are writing hot checks. It's not my fault. It's the damn pin's fault. It's the checkbook's fault. They shouldn't let me write hot checks. How am I to know? It's just this twisted logic that is educationally bankrupt that really you see being used over and over again in almost every debate, at least publicly. So anyway, the Militarization of America report found civilian agencies spent $1.48 billion on guns, ammunition, military-style equipment between 2006 and 2014. That's a lot of guns. That's a lot of bullets. That's a lot of MREs. That's a lot of camouflage pants. Wow. So anyway, food for thought, my friends. Final segment on this other side. Your calls are welcome. It's Blacklisted Radio. Welcome back. It's the final segment. It's Blacklisted Radio. Straight to the phone lines we go. Mike in South Carolina, you're live. Welcome.
Welcome. Hi. Thank you very much, Doug. How you doing tonight?
Good, sir. You?
I am hanging in there. You brought up an interesting person by the name of Charles Rangel.
Sure.
And you forgot. No, you didn't forget. It's been a while back. But the most important part of Charles Rangel to remember is that about a year and a half ago, after he got into trouble for not making out his condominium profits from Panama into the IRS properly, I think he got caught doing that.
Mm-hmm.
He was introduced a new bill. Nancy Pelosi probably delivered it and told him, you're going to introduce this whether you like it or not. That bill was to introduce the draft of the military draft back into a law.
No, he does it every year. That's his hallmark. I don't know, it's probably about 10 years ago. That's how Charles Rangel got on my radar, because I actually listened to him and I thought he sounded pretty sensible, in this one interview, but I couldn't understand why he wanted to bring back the draft. And he said that it would force people to really rethink war. He kind of, couched it as an anti-war initiative, because if we had a draft, then people would wake up to what's going on in Syria, what's happening around the world, and probably take it a lot more seriously. So I agreed with him in that point. I don't know if that's really why he pushed it through, and it's just one of these things, kind of DOA every time. It's nobody's going to vote for a draft, because I think, in my personal opinion, that would be a catalyst for the anti-war movement that would actually bring back the now decapitated, dead, defunct anti-war movement we have in this country. Hey, Mike, appreciate the call. We got to move. Fred in Iowa, you are live, sir. Welcome to Blacklisted Radio.
Yeah, hi, Doug. Can you hear me?
I can.
Yeah, I watched the Bricks movie last night. I'll be 79 next week. That's the most extraordinary film that I've ever watched in my life. Now, due to the time constraints, even though you may allow me the time.
Well, I'm up against a hard clock here, but just try to be as concise as possible.
Well, I'll just cover a part of it, and that's all I can know. Anyhow, I'm supposedly from English and Dutch extraction, mainly English. And I was so proud of the English part today about what England done, give us the Magna Carta and the translation of the King James Bible, and first real Protestant nation, which gave us the Industrial Revolution and Industrial Age and creativity. Now, I think of myself as an American with no hyphens, but there's people that are into ancestry, and I know my ancestors, and I didn't have to go to the Mormon temple to get it. My mom and dad is Adam and Eve.
Okay.
Which that walked the face of the earth is that's their parents.
Hey, Fred. Yeah, we all are part of the human race, regardless of who you believe our ancestors are. We all come from very similar bloodlines when you get high enough up there, for sure. All right, appreciate the calls. Great fun time was had, hopefully by you, definitely by me. Thanks to the crew there at RBN for, doing what they do, keeping the streams up and rocking and rolling, mixing the ones and twos. I'll be back next week for another live edition of Blacklisted Radio. Until then, take care.